there, friends, it's Laurie. Thanks so much for stopping by. I found these cute patriotic gnomes at the Dollar Tree and I thought they would look perfect in a wreath, so I decided to make one, and I hope you enjoy it. Let's get busy. Getting started, I'm using one of the 14-inch wire wreath forms from the Dollar Tree. I use these all the time and they're not only inexpensive, but they make the perfect base to start your wreath. I'm going to be wrapping my form and I'm going to use some of this white ribbon. I've honestly had this for the longest time, but you can use anything that you have on hand. Using my hot glue gun, I'm placing some on the wire support and then I'm attaching the ribbon. And after I have my first piece in place, I just continue adding the hot glue and the ribbon and working my way around the form. I'm going to be adding some of the Dollar Tree white doilies to this wreath, so that's why I'm wrapping it with my white ribbon. But if you're making a patriotic wreath, I think as long as you use a red, white, or blue ribbon, it'll work out just fine. Now that my form is wrapped, I'm going to place it aside, and I'm using 4 packages of these pretty white lace doilies that I found at the Dollar Tree. They come 2 per package, which is perfect because I'm going to be adding on 8 to my wreath. I removed them all from the packages and they have a little tag on the back, so I removed that as well. To make my doilies into little flowers, I'm using 4 pieces of 12-inch floral wire and I'm cutting it in half. To make my doily flowers, I'm first folding it in half, and then in half again, and then in half a third time. And now that I have it folded, you'll see a little point at the end. I'm attaching the folded pieces together about 1 inch up from the folded point. I'm taking a half piece of my floral wire and I'm feeding it up through the bottom. I'm then coming across the top and feeding that same piece of floral wire back down the other side to meet the other wire on the bottom. I'm then taking each of the wires and wrapping one around one side and then the other around the other. I then join the 2 wires together, twist them tightly, and wrap the excess wire around the end of the fabric. So I'm basically securing the folded fabric together, and then when I'm done, I open it up and you can see a white doily flower. After my first one was complete, I continued on and made 7 more, and the most important part is making sure to use that wire to attach the pointed fabric together. The doilies are made out of 100% polyester and the edges are kind of floppy, and I really need them to be stiff and firm. So I'm going to be using my Mod Podge, but if you have fabric stiffener on hand, that would work great too. I'm placing my doily down on a piece of waxed paper so that it won't stick, and I'm using my Mod Podge. I'm using a wet sponge brush and a generous amount of Mod Podge, and I'm applying it to the front of the doily. Once I finish with the top and it has a complete coat, I'm then turning it over and doing the same to the bottom. When I was done, I made sure that my doily was lying flat on the waxed paper. And then followed the same instructions for the next 7. Now that they've dried, the fabric is stiff and I'm going to attach them onto the wreath form. I just wanted to pop in here and say, if you're enjoying my video so far and you're new to my channel, please consider clicking on that little red subscribe button below and leaving me a big thumbs up. And you know, if you're one of my returning friends, I am always so happy to see you. I added some hot glue to the top and then attached the bottom of the doily. To keep them evenly spaced, I'm now adding hot glue directly under the top doily and then adding the bottom doily. I'm now adding some hot glue to the side of the form, placing down a doily, and then doing the exact same thing on the other side. To attach the next 4, I'm adding some hot glue and a doily in between my first 4, and this way it will keep them all evenly spaced. Once I had them all in place, I thought it looked so pretty that you could add on a bow and just hang it as is. And because this worked up so quickly, I'm definitely going to try these again as a base for some wreaths that I make in the future. I'm adding on some mesh curls as an accent, and I'm using some of the white and some of the red, white, and blue deco mesh from the Dollar Tree. To make them quicker to cut, I just cut out a 10-inch piece of cardboard. I placed the end of the red, white, and blue deco mesh on one end of the cardboard, and then I wrapped it around until I had 16 pieces. If you're using separate red and blue rolls of deco mesh, you'll only need to cut out 8 of each. When I was done, I then wrapped the white deco mesh, giving myself 8 pieces. Now that I have these cut, just like the doilies, I'm going to attach my curls together by using 4 12-inch pieces of floral wire cut in half. To help me hold the curls after I roll them, I'm using 2 clips, and I had just picked these up at the Dollar Tree. I'm starting with my red, white, and blue mesh, and I'm simply rolling a loose curl. When I'm done, I then use the clip to hold it together. I'm making 3 curls per bunch, and now I'm rolling my white mesh into a loose curl. And when I'm done, I'm using my clip to hold it together. And to finish up, I'm rolling another loose curl with my red, white, and blue mesh. To make my bunch, I'm adding the white curl to the top, and then I'm offsetting the blue and the red ends. To attach them, I'm now using my half piece of floral wire. I'm wrapping it over the top and then pulling the 2 ends together tightly and twisting them into place. Now that my first one's complete, I'm going to follow the same instructions and make 7 more. To attach the mesh bunches onto the doilies, I'm folding over the wire and making it flat on the bottoms. When I'm done and to attach them, I'm once again using my glue gun, and I'm placing a dot of hot glue in the center of each doily and then attaching one of the bunches. To make sure they were evenly spaced around the wreath, that's why I used the center of each of the doilies. Now that I have all my mesh bunches attached in place, I'm going to be adding on some ribbon accents. I'm using 4 different ribbons, a 2.5-inch Patriotic burlap ribbon from the Dollar Tree, and a 2.5-inch red sheer ribbon that's also from the Dollar Tree. I'm using a 1.5-inch Patriotic star ribbon. This came from Michael's. And I'm also using a 1.5-inch red, white, and blue ribbon that I picked up at Walmart a while ago. I'm once again using my 10-inch piece of cardboard, but this time it's to cut the ribbons. I'm wrapping my 4 ribbons around and then cutting 8 from each. When they're all cut, I'm then dovetailing the ends of each, and it's super easy. All you need to do is fold the ribbon in half and then cut away the end at an angle. With all my ribbons cut and dovetailed, it's time to put them together, but this time I'm going to be using 8 full pieces of my floral wire. I'm making 4 ribbon clusters, the burlap and red on the bottom, then the red, white, and blue, and then I'm adding the patriotic stars. I make sure the ends are even, and then I fold my ribbons in half to find the center. I give them a little pinch, wrap my wire over the top, pull it tightly together, and then give it a good twist. And to make my next 4, I once again put the burlap in the red on the bottom, but this time I add the patriotic stars and then the red, white, and blue ribbon. I make sure the ends are even, fold my ribbons in half, give them a little pinch in the center, and then wrap the floral wire over and twist it together tightly. And now that I'm done, I have 2 sets of ribbons, 4 with the patriotic stars on the top and 4 with the red, white, and blue. To attach the ribbons to the wreath, I'm starting with the patriotic stars on the top. I'm attaching the ribbons in between the mesh curls, and on either side of the form, I'm sliding the wires in between the open work of the doilies. When I'm done, I just twist the wire together tightly and secure the ribbons into place. When I'm done to attach my second set, I'm going directly across from my first and attaching the next bunch in between the mesh curls the exact same way as the first. I'm centering my next bunch in between the first 2 and in the center of the curls. And my last star bunch of ribbons, I'm attaching directly across from my last one. To add on the red, white, and blue bunches, I'm evenly placing one between each of the mesh curls and directly across from each other. When I'm done, they'll be evenly spaced around the form. Now that I have them all in place, I'm just working my way around the wreath and fluffing up the ribbons. I found these 3 cute patriotic gnomes at the Dollar Tree, and they have little beads in the bottom so they can actually stand up on their own. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with them, and then it kind of hit me, and I thought they would look really cute in the middle of a wreath. I wanted to bring in some of the color from the burlap ribbon, and I'm using some Dollar Tree jute to add on some accents. I cut 3 pieces at about 60 inches in length. To add it to the hat, I gave myself about 8 inches or so of jute on one side and then tied it into a knot. I then wrapped the jute around the hat, making sure to leave enough at the end to tie it into a knot and make a simple bow. And when I was done, I just cut off the remaining jute tails. I then followed the same instructions for the gnome with the stars on his hat and the other gnome with the stripes. I did make sure that the jute was matching on both of the striped gnomes because I'm going to attach them next to each other. To make sure that the jute doesn't move on the gnomes' hats, I turned them over and just added a dot of hot glue on the back. I found these sparkly foam stars at the Dollar Tree, and I'm adding on the red, white, and blue in the center of each of my gnomes' hats. Before I attach them to my wreath, I'm placing a support on the back, and I'm using a large craft stick, but you can always use a piece of wood or some skewers or anything that you have on hand. I used my hot glue gun to attach it to the back, and I made sure that it was high enough so that my middle gnome would rest against it. With that complete, I turned my wreath over and placed my gnomes in the center. I then added some hot glue to hold them in place. To keep with adding some of the color from the burlap ribbon and the jute on the gnomes' hats, I'm using some of this nautical rope from the Dollar Tree. I first want to find its placement, so I'm just kind of evenly looping it around the outside. I had added some nautical rope to a coastal wreath that I just made, and I loved the way it came out, so that gave me the idea to add it to this wreath. And if you'd like to check that out, I'll have it linked below in my description. Now that I'm happy with my loops, I'm using my glue gun and attaching them into place. I'm adding on all these accents, and that's just personal preference, but I always say, do what you like and add what you want and just make it your own. To add USA to my wreath, I'm using one of the Dollar Tree signs, and I just detach the stars from the hanging ribbons. I'm attaching each of them together by hot gluing the pointed ends. Attaching them is super easy. I just hot glued them to the bottom of my wreath, and I made sure that the point of the S star was in the middle of the gnome's beard. To give my wreath a little sparkle, I'm adding 6 of the red, white, and blue foam stars. Using my hot glue gun, I evenly spaced them and alternated the colors around the outside of my wreath. To finish up my wreath, I'm adding on my last accent, and my mother was born on Flag Day, so as a tribute to my mom, I'm placing 2 little flags in the arms of the gnomes. And with that, my patriotic gnome wreath is ready to hang. I hope you had fun making this patriotic gnome wreath with me. If you're new to my channel and you haven't yet subscribed and you're thinking, hey, I'd like to come back and hang out with her again, don't forget to click that little red subscribe button below. I'll see you all very soon. Bye, everybody.